All right, everyone. Hong Kong continues to spiral out of control. You've got apparently Chinese troops on the border with Hong Kong, which supposedly it's an interesting scenario. Hong Kong was British long ago, and the British sort of gave it up as sort of a territorial thing to China, but with certain contractual stringencies involved. Like Hong Kong wouldn't be run by basically the commies. It has, three-quarters autonomy, let's say. And the British, I guess, are supposed to kind of safeguard that fact, but the British can't do anything anymore because they don't have a powerful military these days. And so China is sort of getting ready to steamroll them. You've got like Yakuza, I mean, not Yakuza, but what are the triad gang members, I guess, beating people who are trying to protest, like on the trains there. They've shut down the airport because of protests. The Chinese government has troops on the border basically ready to storm Hong Kong and subjugate them to communism and hardline authoritarian ideology. It looks like the Western world's not really going to do jack shit about it. Now, it's not a huge surprise. It's like, okay, what are we supposed to do exactly? If you were to try to put like U.S. troops, like the British can't do anything. Yeah, the British going to war with China. That would be a very short war, and it wouldn't be decided in the favor of the UK, by the way. You kind of need projective force in order to wage such a struggle. China at least can project within the region. U.S. could potentially forestall this, but wouldn't it look a little bit odd if we started sailing a bunch of U.S. soldiers into Hong Kong? And by the way, what benefit would it be for us anyway? Now, it's interesting. The China could start a worldwide depression by these moves, by the way. Hong Kong is a very big investment hub, a very big travel and trade hub. It's extremely wealthy despite its extremely small size. It's also a major tourist destination. They could really do damage to their own economy through these maneuvers. Let's say the Chinese invade Hong Kong and they end up sanctioned or something. That'll bring their economy to its knees. It's already been weakened by its ongoing trade war with the U.S. By the way, this will shove our economy down too. Trump probably knows this, which is why he's trying not to antagonize and get involved. He doesn't want this shit right now. He's going into a re-election bid. The worst thing that can happen would be China goes into a tailspin, drags us down with it. Nobody wants that. So hopefully saner heads will prevail. And Hong Kong won't get invaded. But the thing is, it looks increasingly like that's what is going to happen. Like you're going to see communism take it over, which means that instead of being a glorious quasi-capitalistic shining gem in a sea of authoritarianism, which has some at least limited facets of being a free country, it'll go back to squalor. It'll look like Shanghai or something. It'll go back into tyranny will take over. We'll probably have to accept Hong Kong refugees. It'll fall to us. I mean, the British aren't going to do it. Seems like it's very funny because some British politicians are actually xenophobic, and then the rest of them are are xenophobic against the British. Like they hate their own English culture, I guess, or the Scots or whatever. It's a very interesting country when I really look at it. I'm looking at Hong Kong. It's a tiny area. It's basically just one metropolitan district. Lopsidedly, it has a huge amount of economic power, though. If it gets snuffed out, I mean, its economy, it has to be slowing down anyway because of nonstop strikes and protests. But if it collapses, if war breaks out, it'd be a quick war because the Chinese would overrun it within a day. But if fighting breaks out, this could be a very big problem. And a lot of people, I don't think, even know that anything's happening over there. People have been pushing me to cover it. For a while, it was like, well, there are constantly protests in some of these outlying areas against Chinese influence and involvement. Hong Kong definitely on that list, but it happens in these other neighboring nations as well. China is flexing its economic and diplomatic muscles recently more than it has in the past. There are a lot of Asian nations that are unhappy with this. They either lean more towards the Western world, they're partnered with the U.S., or they want more power for themselves. They see China as a major Asian competitor, like India or something like that, or the Philippines, or Japan, certainly. And so they're unhappy. So you have some of these tensions. You have tensions in East Africa, too. You've got a situation where China has invested enormous amounts of money into developing heavy industry in East Africa, literally offshoring some of its own industrial capabilities to Africa. You've got tension in some of those countries, though. You've got literally political parties now exist in Africa, some of which are in power. They came to power solely on the back of one promise, a single plank platform that they would kick the Chinese government out of their countries and restore autonomy. Why? Because China's acting worse than any European colonial power other than maybe fucking the Belgian Congo era. Literally, they go in, they build factories and roads and shit, but the only people who use them are a handful of Chinese investor class and managerial individuals. The African natives there are getting still shit wages, and they get shit on and mistreated. There are even tales. Funniest thing in the world, I'm sure, to like maybe an ethno-nationalistic Westerner or something. You've got these stories. One of them was on the radio, I think, and I heard a snippet of it. This was years ago. I think it was from Kenya, if I remember correctly, that some Chinese manager class individual, money-wise, probably makes 50 times the average salary of anyone in Kenya does, had stolen some dude's girlfriend, or his wife had left him for a Chinese investor. It was hilarious. You have these stories going on, so China's going to have increasingly these problems. It's the problem of succeeding too much. The U.S. has this problem as well. Other major countries have, like the European powers that used to be, they failed their test at transitioning towards being considerable powers. That's why they're not anymore. France is no longer particularly feared on the world stage. The UK even less. The UK doesn't have the naval capability to take the Chinese on. It can't defend Hong Kong. Be interesting if we end up having to get involved. Now, of course, I would oppose any military action there as well. It's like, here's a little chunk of what basically is China that was kind of British, but it's basically China. And as someone who opposes communism, I'm like, well, this is too bad. Maybe we should just allow everyone in Hong Kong to come to the United States. Let's just reestablish. San Francisco has a lot of problems. Let's just liquidate San Francisco, make it Hong Kong 2.0, and put the population of Hong Kong there. Why don't we do that? At least we'd have less of a problem with public defecation, I guarantee that, because when all the hippies are gone. I don't even think it's people that don't have a toilet to go to. I think it's just people that, they're like back to nature and got problems. Let's eliminate some of the problems there. Let's just absorb Hong Kong completely. Or have it, it'd be really interesting. The U.S. says, okay, Hong Kong is ours now. We're making them a U.S. protectorate. We're solving the colonial problem by getting directly involved. And if you invade, it's an act of war. It'd be interesting to see what would happen. We're probably the only ones who can get involved. It doesn't seem that Trump wants to. There are economic reasons for that. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Hopefully it doesn't mean the Chinese government comes and kills 1 million people. Which is what the Chinese government's idea of solving a problem usually boils down to genocide. So, we'll see what happens. That's about all. Peace out.